Well, good morning and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. I got an email from my friends at Grassfire, Grassfire Nation. I used to work for them, and we speak close, but I still get their email. And it was about the SAVE Act, and it seems like some of the your Congress critters are maybe there's talk that they're going to back away from the SAVE Act. Oh, so you don't know what the SAVE Act is? Well, let me tell you. So for decades, Americans were told that our elections were secure simply because we were told they were. Questioning the process was framed as dangerous. Y'all remember, right? Not too long ago, asking who was voting, how ballots were cast, and whether the rules were being enforced became taboo. Got you kicked off platforms like this. The mere act of asking was treated as an attack on democracy itself, right? You remember. So at the center of the current debate is the Safeguard American Voters Eligibility Act, better known as the SAVE Act. Its premise is very simple, almost shockingly so. Only U.S. citizens should be allowed to vote in U.S. elections. The states should be required to verify that citizenship before registering voters. Now, now, this is if you think about this, registration is at the very, very beginning of the process, right? So all the groups, including groups like Urban Game Changers and the like, because Urban Game Changers is us, the bunch of people who are urban game urban game changers who still watch the videos. We would have to find ways to verify that the people that we register to vote are U.S. citizens. And none of us have a problem with that because there's all sorts of ways to do it, right? Passports, green cards, most places driver's license, not everywhere, because when there are states and counties handing out driver's license to illegal aliens, that becomes a problem, which means that has to stop, right? And this is what the left knows. But not a problem, really. Now, this idea used to be uncontroversial. It used to be what we saw called common sense. But today it's treated by its critics as radical, discriminatory, and even authoritarian. That reaction tells us more than any talking point ever could. The art, we're going to explain why the SAVE Act what it actually does, why it exists, and why it's necessary now, and why the resistance to it reveals a deeper crisis in how America understands citizenship, sovereignty, and self-government. All right. Here's what the SAVE Act does. Plain and simple. The SAVE Act would amend federal election law to require states to verify U.S. citizenship before registering an individual to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship for voter registration. It would prohibit non citizens from registering or voting in federal elections. It would establish clear standards for acceptable proof, birth certificates, passport, and naturalization documents. Okay. It would allow states to use existing federal databases to e-verify or whatever to verify citizenship. It would prevent states from relying solely on a sworn affidavit or unchecked self stuff. At the bottom of most registration forms, they say things like, "You swear that everything is on here is correct," and they just click yes and move on with life, right? That's all it does. There's no racial criteria. There's no party affiliation, no ideological test, no new restrictions on lawful voters. If you're a lawful voter, doesn't affect you one single solitary bit. No purging of voter rolls based on guesses or demographics, just citizenship verification. And it all sounds reasonable. You know why? Because it is. Here's the uncomfortable truth: federal law already prohibits non citizens from voting in federal elections, but the enforcement is weak, inconsistent, and often intentionally avoided. In many states, registration forms ask applicants to check a box affirming that they're citizens. Sure, I'm a citizen, with no verification required. Some states automatically register voters through the DMV. We call it motor voter, right? Uh, where citizenship is not properly confirmed. Others allow registration using documents that establish residency, but not citizenships, like electric bills, that kind of thing, um, rental leases. So, in short, the system often relies on the honor system. That might have worked in a smaller and a more unified nation, but it does not work in a country experiencing historic levels of illegal immigration, mass asylum abuse, and collapsing enforcement credibility. So when you combine millions of non-citizens residing in the US, local jurisdictions allowing non-citizens to vote in municipal elections, and that's happening, right? Confusion between state, local, and federal election rules, and automatic registration systems with minimal safeguards. You create a system where illegal voting is not just possible, it's inevitable. The SAVE Act exists to close that gap. Now, is it something that's going to complete? Because there isn't anything. Because people are fairly ingenious about their criminality, and I use that word on purpose because if illegals are voting in American federal elections, it's criminal. So there is criminality there. Critics reflexively say there's no evidence of widespread non-citizen voting. That claim is both, you know, I I'm pausing because I'm wondering how to share this story. Somebody that I know said to me through Facebook that there is no empirical evidence of of illegal voting. Now, here's the deal: you can't have empirical evidence of what you say is a non-event. So the claim is both dishonest and irrelevant. First, the lack of enforcement guarantees lack of data. So if you don't check citizenship, you won't find violations. If states refuse to audit voter rolls, you won't detect fraud. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So just because, so you're not checking for something, it doesn't mean it's not happening. So, let me give an example that some of my viewers will understand. Here's the deal. So, if you're at a school and you don't count absences when kids miss, you can say, we don't have any absences. We have no record of absenteeism. Because you never take roll. If you never take roll, you won't have any evidence of absenteeism. That makes sense now? That's what these people are saying when they say there's no evidence of widespread non citizen voting. Because if you never check, there won't be any evidence of it. Second, we already know that non citizens have voted in US elections. Multiple states have documented cases. Federal prosecution exists. Academic studies acknowledge it happens at a low but measurable rates. Here's the key point critics avoid: even a small number of illegal votes can swing close elections. Democracy does not require fraud to be widespread or to be illegitimate. It requires it to be possible. The SAVE Act addresses possibility, not paranoia. All right. The most revealing opposition of the SAVE Act comes from those who argue that that voting is a human right. Lord have mercy. Not a civic one. This obviously is false. False. Voting is a citizen's right tied to membership in a political community. It is a mechanism by which people govern themselves. Without boundaries around that membership, self-government collapses into administrative chaos. This is the thing that always bothers me about all of this. Every freaking nation on earth, every nation on earth, from South Africa to Liechtenstein to China to Australia to Greenland and Iceland and France and England and Germany and Egypt, Nigeria, you name one. Puts a guardrail or border around who can vote in their elections. Every nation on earth restricts voting to its citizens. Even countries celebrated by progressives for inclusive democracy do this. Norway, Sweden, all of them. The argument against the SAVE Act is not rooted in compassion. It's rooted in the erosion of the national identity itself. If citizenship means nothing, then borders mean nothing. And if borders mean nothing, then laws mean nothing. And if laws mean nothing, then democracy is just theater. All right. Publicly, opponents claim that the SAVE Act will disenfranchise voters. And privately, they know that that's not true. The real fear is this: verification creates accountability. And accountability exposes systems that thrive on ambiguity. The modern left depends on mass participation without scrutiny, administrative complexity that prevents oversight. Make it as complicated as possible. Whenever we're talking about anything, someone will say, well, this is very complicated. This is very complex stuff. There are a lot of moving parts. It's hard for the average person to really understand what's going on. My question was always, why? Why is it so complicated? Why does it have to be so complicated? Well, it's complicated for a reason: to keep you out. Emotional narratives replacing procedural safeguards. They depend on courts substituting sentiment for law. We talked about that in yesterday's video, didn't we? The SAVE Act cuts through all of that with clarity. Either you're a citizen or you're not. Either you can vote or you can't. That clarity terrifies a movement built on blurred lines. Are you a citizen? You can vote. Are you not a citizen? Then you can't vote. Just like everywhere else in the world. So you can't go and live in France and decide to vote, in their national elections. Can't do that in Nigeria. Can't do that in South Africa. You can't do that in the Congo. You can't do that in China or Japan or South Korea, India. Name somewhere. Name somewhere. Some in the comments. Name somewhere, because I'll research it, and if I find it that is true, then I will apologize. And I'm not talking about local elections. I'm talking about federal elections, national elections. So when you find these places, do your due diligence. Okay, so here's the phrase voter suppression has been stretched beyond recognition. It once referred to poll taxes, literacy tests, and explicit racial exclusion. Today, it's used to describe any rule at all that enforces eligibility. Requiring ID is called suppression. I think that this is probably one of the ones that probably gets me the angriest. Um, Walking around in this skin for 65 years, 65 on the third years now, I guess, that somehow it's harder for me, that it's been harder for me to get an ID. When what's her face, who ran for president, now Kamala Harris, talks about, so many places don't have fax machines. Like somehow I need a fax machine to get ID. Like I don't have, like I can't in 4 years raise $10, get on a bus, go to the DMV and get an ID because I wear this skin. My neighbor across the street and I, who lives across the street now, sadly he passed away in September, and I miss the dude. He's cranky. He's a cranky old so and so. But I miss the guy. He once told me that it was hard. It's harder for black people to get IDs than white folks, and I said, "How?" I said, "I've had an ID since I was 16. Now I had an ID when I was 16 because you know driver's permit and driver's license, and I needed a social security card to work, that kind of thing. But I've had an ID since I was 16, and it was not hard to get. And I have lost. I don't know. Have you ever lost your driver's license? Ever had it stolen? Ever just freaking lost it? Had to get a replacement? I think I've lost one, maybe two. I don't know. But I was able to go down to the DMV and pay for the damn thing, get another one. I have one in my wallet now. I'm not going to show you all. I'm not going to show you all the particulars, but I got one now. Hang on a second. It's right here. And yes, I'm a star belly sneech. I got a star on mine. I do. Let me pop this up here. There we go. Can't see that? There you go. It's got a star in it, so I got a star belly sneech, so I can travel. Because I was able to get my birth certificate, I was able to do all that. Well, this idea that requiring an ID is somehow suppression. It tears apart the whole voter suppression nonsense. Yeah, so it always goes to Dadaism that requiring citizenship is proof of of voter suppression, asking that the person who is voting actually is a citizen of the nation is somehow suppression. Requiring accurate voter rolls, removing people who have passed away, is somehow voter suppression. My friend, who I told you just passed away, I looked almost immediately, and I guess after the death certificate was filed, he was removed from the voter rolls in this county. So there won't be a absentee ballot sent to his home. Yeah, and there shouldn't be. The couple down the street who have both passed away. And I mentioned them because they were here when we got there, and and the couple down the street were the only other Republican house on our block. It's just us. It was just us and them. They've both passed away, and their names have been removed from the voter rolls pretty quickly. So as far as I can tell, on my block, the voter rolls are pretty clean, and that's not voter suppression. It isn't. is accuracy, is clarity. Yet no one claims that requiring a passport to board a plane to travel is travel suppression. I mean, do you have the? I mean, do you really think that you should be able to get on an airplane and go anywhere in the world you want? Like, I want to go to Portugal. I'm going to book a flight to Portugal, and I'm just going to go. You have a passport? Nope. Because if you don't, if they don't let me go and get off in Portugal, that's travel suppression. Of course not. Ridiculous. And no one argues that limits for alcohol are somehow drunk suppression. They're keeping me from getting drunk, keeping me from getting wet. Really? Rights exist with rules, and voting is no different. The SAVE Act does not suppress voters. It protects voters by protecting the value of their vote. And one of the most cynical arguments against election integrity is that it harms minority voters. I'm going to tell you that if the elections aren't free and fair, that's what harms minority voters. They claim that the claim rests on an insult, the assumption that minority voters are less capable. We talked about this already. Are less capable of basic legal requirements. Minority voters are citizens. You got birth certificates. You got passports. We have the same legal standing as every other American. Framing citizenship verification as racist is not advocacy. It's not. Stop it. It's condescension. It's condescension. It's saying in my face that I'm not as smart, that I'm not as capable, that I'm a child that needs protection. And increasingly, minority communities are rejecting it. Not as fast as they need to, not as fast as we need to. But it's starting to happen. People are saying, "What are you talking about? I can't get an ID. I got an ID. I've always had an ID." They're like, people are like me. I've had an ID since I was 15, 16 years old. What do you mean I can't get one? Like there's something wrong with me. I need a fax machine. Kamala Harris. Wow. Legal immigrants in particular understand the insult. Legal immigrants, they follow the rules. They earned the citizenship. They took the test. They filled out the affidavits, all that stuff. They respected the value of the vote. They did not appreciate seeing it diluted for political convenience. All right, here we go. We're wrapping up here. The SAVE Act does not nationalize elections because we don't want that. It establishes minimum federal standards for federal elections. Because you'll hear they're trying to nationalize the election so they can make Trump king. You're going to hear that. You're going to hear that. It establishes minimum federal standards for federal elections, something Congress has a clear constitutional authority to do. States remain free to administer elections and do whatever madness they want for state elections. States choose how to verify citizenship. They still manage their own voter rolls. What they cannot do is pretend citizenship doesn't matter, especially in federal elections. And this is not federal overreach, it's federal responsibility. So at its core, the SAVE Act is about trust. Trust that elections reflect the will of the people, trust that laws are enforced, trust that citizenship means something, trust that participation is earned, not assumed. So when trust collapses, systems don't reform, they break. You cannot hold a republic together by demanding silence from skeptics. You restore confidence by making integrity visible. The SAVE Act does exactly that. Because this issue cuts through the heart of everything that we stand for, because we believe that law matters here at Fight Back Media. We believe that citizenship matters here at Fight Back Media. At Fight Back Media, self-government requires boundaries. Truth is not determined by outrage. The SAVE Act is not radical. It's restorative. It reminds America that democracy is not a feeling, it's not a vibe. It's a structure. And structures require maintenance. You got to take care of it. So the loudest voices opposing the SAVE Act are not defending voters. They're not. They're defending a system that benefits from chaos, ambiguity, and moral intimidation. The American people are not asking for perfection, because perfection is a snipe hunt. What we're asking for is honesty. Who can vote? Who can't vote? And why? The SAVE Act answers those questions very clearly. And that is precisely why it matters. If protecting the ballot is controversial, then the controversy tells us everything we need to know. My name is Willie Lawson, and welcome to the Morning Report. Till we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.